This week on RSBANDB Update, Dead and Buried unwraps the origins of the Raptor. We delve into why decisions were made, what they mean for the future of the storyline, and what roles puzzles need to play. This all culminates in a grand discussion of what defines a season. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 944, recorded Thursday, July 20th, 2023. Unwrapping the Raptor. Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of RSBANDB Update. It is Quest Week here. Hopefully the folks joining us for the first time, well, you're in for quite a ride. If you've never been around for Quest Week before, we run through the finer points of the quest in question. That sounds interesting saying that like that, but nonetheless, we're going to have a good lore discussion this week about Dead and Buried, the newest quest in the Fort 4 and 3 season, I guess we can call it now, but more on that too. Tanis, you're here as you are each and every week. Welcome aboard.
Hey, Shane.
Also joining us is Quest Caping.
Quest Caping, here for the question of quests.
Right on. Resident lore expert and one of the many questers in Clan Quest, and also another Clan Quester, head of Guild Council and longtime fixture here at RSBANDB Update is Earth. Welcome for Quest Week.
Howdy doodly.
So, I want to dive into this quest, but before we do that, I have some housekeeping to do, and I'll just say, of course, that everything we talk about this week, you'll be able to follow along in the full show notes at update.show. You can find myself in-game at Shane12088, Tanis is at Tanis79, Questcaping is Questcaping, and Earth can be found at Lord Earth, soon to be maxed, but hopefully not during this show.
1,109 experience away, and I am going to go sit my ass at the Earth altar right now and log out.
Right on.
Not pulling a U.
Of course, I also need to say that this podcast would not be possible without the support of our wonderful Patreon supporters, specifically the folks at The Experienced here. You guys do so much for us, and this week we'd like to thank Andrew C., Drama Free, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Maniac RS, Ricky A., Rippeth, Seth W., and The Naked Captain. And for folks counting, that's 10 people in The Experienced here. So yes, that offering has sold out for the time being. Just watch this space. It might be back in the future, but of course, more on what the experienced here means in just a little bit. So you guys ready for Dead and Buried in terms of this quest? Finale of the Fort 4 and 3 season, I'm going to say, going forward. And with this quest, we pick up the storyline after Murder on the Border, and I feel like I was a little bit surprised going into this one that we were getting this quest, and yet it was only classed as medium. And if we look at the quest description, it says Zemmereagle is up to something. While your newly arrived guards, under the command of the Raptor, help to keep his hordes at bay, it's time to delve into the crypt and find out what he's planning. Along the way, you'll upgrade your fort with a potent new fletching building as you arm yourselves to better face this growing threat. And, you know, last week we did a Lord Diggers episode on Zemmereagle. We thought that he was going to have a big role in this quest. We saw the backside of him.
I was going to say, well, it's not good anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine. We'll save that for later. I'm still glad we did this. We had fun with Avernick and whatnot, and we laid down the lore of Zemmereagle, and I was a little bit shocked to see that there wasn't that much lean on that. But the quest, of course, starts with the need to find a new captain to be training the troops outside, and this is where the Rangers' workroom comes in. You conduct interviews with a number of candidates, and the one candidate that wins, of course, goes on and looks after the Rangers' workroom. Well, you can go out with the Raptor to the crypt, but I want to highlight during this part of the quest something important, in that we actually got a cutscene at the early part of the quest here, where we were presented with a portrait of King Rold and Queen Ella Maria. Did anybody else find that weird at the time? In terms of just
it went over my damn head.
Okay. Same.
Oh no,
Yep.
I'm as clueless as Shane.
Questscaping?
Yeah, there it was, literally over our heads.
And we'll get into what that is. And I mean, they literally pan the camera up and show this portrait of the two of them front and center. And maybe that should have been what the quest was teased about, but I feel like I feel like with this we're one step below the V quest, in that we were promised a Dragonkin quest, or we were promised the V quest, but we got a Dragonkin quest instead. In that this one turned out to largely be about Ellerbria, I think. And I found this so odd seeing this portrait there that I actually took a screenshot of this at the time, because I thought, why are they doing that? And then we just pass forward, and Princess, the that's not a beagle, that's what kind of breed of dog is that? Anyways,
An adorable
Spaniel.
one.
Okay, Spaniel responds with worried barking, which, I mean, okay, maybe something else is going on here, but I just wanted to highlight that portrait because I just want people who might not have done the quest to just know that portrait plays a huge role. And I say that because there are people who listen to these Quest Week episodes without doing the quest to kind of get an overview of what's happening in the quest. So,
Spoiler alert.
I will say at this time, I do think it was a mistake. I get this, but I do think it was a mistake to graphically update her at this time.
Yeah, there's a whole sort of weird confluence of graphical updates that have led to this reveal maybe not being the best that it could have been.
Yeah.
that's something Mod Jack specifically talked about
Man.
on the live stream this week too. We'll get to that after in terms of how this quest came together. Then comes the Sophia interview, and then with that, we're of course free to head down into the crypt. And with that, you do need to kill a few material gals out there, and I've been warned that I am not to repeat what's in their examine info in a specific voice.
Boy.
So I'm not going to
Would you
do that
like-
on the show.
A material gal?
Yeah,
Just material gal.
exactly.
Okay, there we go.
Did you
All
get that in during the quest?
I got that. No.
Okay,
No.
okay. Earth, what'd you think of that, being our resident pop music expert on this week?
I mean, it was fine.
Okay,
I'm not really a huge Madonna fan,
all right.
so
And the thing I'm not allowed to say, well, I mean, you just examine the what
no,
they-
they said that out loud. There was no examine.
Oh, okay.
There was an examine, but it was an entirely different pun on the song.
Okay, fair enough. But I won't say that because I promise not to. So it's
When he says he promised not to, that was under threat of me quitting. So
yeah. Effectively, the gals say, "Rise from your grave" in a very specific voice, and we'll just leave it at that.
in a furry voice.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. But
Shane is keeping his furry side well under wraps today.
let's not pretend that exists. Okay. Okay.
So we're acknowledging that it exists?
No, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Anyways, in the crypt,
The lady doth protest too much, methinks.
in the crypt, we find a Dragonkin device, which I mean, we knew that door was going to have some kind of Dragonkin influence. I think based on where we were going with the storyline, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
and I thought that was a neat touch, because I thought, after Anachronia and Orphan and the Elder God Wars, Carapac and all that, I thought we were done with the Dragonkin, but it's just nice to have a little bit of reference to them after the fact, right?
Yeah,
But
this
they're like
wasn't.
everywhere. They're in everything. Who did it? Dragonkin. What happened? Dragonkin. Dragonkin. Kind of
Good.
like, I mean, they're kind of at the root of everything, and I don't know if I like that.
Well, I'll give you a reason to like it when we get to the end. Actually, I don't know if you'll like it, but it gives me a reason to be hopeful in my own mind in terms of my own way I'd like to see this thing pan out. But we'll get there with that. And you examine the Dragonkin device, and of course, to learn more about it, you got to head on over to Reldo in the Varrock Museum, and he realizes that, well, this Dragonkin device is actually very, very powerful, to the point that it's actually able to make the Raptor fall asleep. And you see that Raptor, inside Reldo's library, is actually in a very, very deep dream state after interacting with the device. And it's up to you to follow him in there with a potion that Reldo provides you. And it's at this point, I feel like, where the quest really takes off in its own direction, and the plot becomes clear that it's not necessarily going to be about figuring out what Zamoreagle's up to. This is a quest about the Raptor at this point, I think we can say.
We're going to go inside first.
This is where everything changed. And the
Oh, God.
But-
Getting inside the Raptor, hey.
yeah,
We're not
this is
doing
where
phrasing anymore.
yeah, everything broke down for me at this point forward.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where.
Are we
everything
talking
changed.
literary, or talking mechanical, or are we talking accessibility?
I mean, both. I mean, everything.
Okay.
Everything happened at once, but especially mechanically.
Okay. I'm gonna say I didn't actually find the way they did the character switching and whatnot that difficult.
It's not that it's difficult; it's just annoying, and I don't think it's fun. I mean, who did anyone like doing sagas? Like, you just had to do it, right? I mean, and I've said before, I do quests for story and or rewards. And if something's super annoying and tedious and just not fun, then it might not be worth the reward, which is kind of where we were with this quest.
I mean, I think it's one of these things that's just inherently clunky with RuneScape's system. The
Yeah.
tile by tile and the whole tick-based nature of it. It's a bit... It just isn't particularly smooth.
Well, in one time, fine. 2 times, okay. 3 times, we're pushing it. But 5 times?
I think it went one too far. I think with the puzzle.
I feel sorry for anyone who didn't realize the Raptor could push it further than you could.
It says it right in the quest.
Well, spacebar
Where?
is...
In that there is a point, if that you are too close to one of the pads, it will say the Raptor should not be used for this because he pushes it too far. That's not what it says exactly verbatim.
Yeah, but you already have to be the Raptor to be pushing it, buddy.
Yeah, you could literally be pushing
And if
entirely
you couldn't
as
figure
yourself.
out that the Raptor could push it further when you are the Raptor pushing it further, then yeah.
I had no problems with this, I will say.
I mean, it was easy.
Yeah, I found it pretty simple.
Yeah, I found it annoying, right? Like,
Okay, so annoying.
You guys
rather
are all
than difficult.
questers, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are the quest demographic, whereas I'm a casual quester that only really am interested if it's a good story or a good reward.
How was it
Neither.
accessibility-wise in the monochromatic environment?
Well, it was no extinction.
Okay, and you're referring to the Erebus part of Extinction, obviously.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good, but it was not nearly as bad as that, is what I'm getting at.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, and maybe you're right there, that they could have cut that down by 1 in terms of making it so that you didn't necessarily have to, do that, 3 or 4 times. Maybe just make it 2 instead to get to the end there. And I wouldn't even call this a puzzle. I just call this, like, and maybe this is where Tanis comes in with your perspective, is that this is just, the typical RuneScape busy work that the character / quester does, right?
Well, but
Yeah,
busy. Oh, sorry, Quest Cape. I just want to say busy work to me, though, is like what we have had in the previous quest in this season.
So, like building the forts.
Building the forts, grinding out for different drops, going and getting, even fetching is not as bad as this to me. That stuff is more of, along that lines, I feel.
Okay, fair enough. And actually,
It wasn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't just the skill grind, but there wasn't very much to deduce. Like, I think there was a lot more time spent on carrying out the puzzle solutions, to what extent it was a puzzle, than there was actually like thinking about it and figuring it out. There wasn't much time.
Yeah, because it
you'd
became
need
clear after the other one that you unlock a stone in one area and you use that to, in effect, unlock the next stone, and then with that you and the Raptor stand in concert with the stones, and then you're able to open the portal, so on and so forth, right?
And you stand somewhere new and, oh, there's a new stone.
Exactly. And I can see exactly what's happening here in terms of the switching. I believe this is probably the same tech that they use in the Carapac boss fight, because my character model turns into the exact same thing that it turns to in the final phase of hard mode Carapac with the time echoes. So I'd imagine there's something similar going on with that behind the scenes. So, but
I mean, it was just the same button.
Yeah, with a different icon. But okay. So let's be 100% fair then, in that for somebody who's not a quester, this could potentially be annoying. So you'd say it was more annoying than difficult, Tanis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just. It reminded me of the sagas, right? Like, and I don't know anyone that thought that was fine.
Well, I do, but the questers.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And to be fair, the sagas were written in a different era with a different combat system that you still have to experience even if you go in with them. So there's that side of it too. But overall, I think what you have just said is that maybe it's time for them to look at doing another set of Fremennik sagas with modern tech like this. Dare I say it?
I hope not. I wasn't trying to give anyone any ideas.
Well, I mean, there's definitely people
you
out there that...
more Fremennik sagas?
No, I don't. I'm just saying that...
That's what I'm hearing you say right now.
No. I'm just saying that the tech for that is something that could probably land in the same place as this quest. I don't know where that would land in a good spot, but it's in that same vein is what I'm getting at. Okay.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yeah. Any other accessibility things on this part of the quest, Tanis, in terms of the coloring and whatnot? Like, what would have made this easier for you from the accessibility standpoint?
Not at this part. There will be more.
Okay, fair
but
enough.
But not here.
All right, fair enough then. With that, we progress to the end of that, and it's at this point where I think the biggest part of the Fort 4 and 3 storyline is revealed once we get to the house, in that this is, in effect, the Raptor's nightmare that we're working in. And we see that because as each time we open one of the gates, we get a further preview of a house that's burning, right? And then right at the end of that, right as soon as we get to that house, we get to a point where we run up to that house and we find 2 graves there. And the camera, slowly but surely, with that, pans around. And all while this is happening, we learn that this is the Raptor's old house. And those were his parents. We still think he at this point.
But do we? See, this is the beauty for me for the Raptor, and this is what was destroyed with this quest. I didn't think it was a he, or a she, or a they, or anything for that matter. It could have been an animated suit of armor. That's what made the Raptor cool.
That would have been a good
mysterious. The mysteriousness of the Raptor. I don't I'm less, emotionally invested in the Batman Forever tale. Like, I, the thing that makes the Raptor cool is you don't know, and that is just shredded. It's just gone.
I feel this is kind of like what I was saying with Zautak last week. Like, you can't explain Zautak, or that's just the end
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
the camp the Raptor
Like-
was in. Was, yeah. And, the camera pans around, and the young child becomes Queen Ella Maria. And then one more pan all the way through, it completely changes that we see that the Raptor is now wearing the Raptor's armor, but behind the helmet, when we get to modern, when the dream vision effectively ends, we see the helmet is gone and the Raptor's Queen Ella Maria.
Yeah.
And
gorgeous cutscene.
And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
one of the best cutscenes RS has ever done. Let's just be 100% honest with that.
Like, for all the grousing about how
Yeah.
3D cutscenes just
Don't work. They made this
are
one
not
work
what they
wonderfully.
used to be. Yeah, they really got the camera movement perfect timing for it to just be so smooth.
And the lighting and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was wonderful in this part of the quest. And this cutscene in this quest set the talking points everywhere for what was going on with the quest, and this became the thing that Dead and Buried became about. It was the reveal that the Raptor is Queen Ella Maria. And there's interesting dialogue in there, and this is going to be one of our main key discussion points here with this, about how this all went, because if you look at it from this way, that portrait in the town hall there at the fort was the foreshadowing device. But nobody would have thought that going into this, that we were going to be having a Queen Ella Maria / Raptor quest because of that. So that's
usually I'm
why.
good at picking up on the Chekhov's gun things like that.
And this one was just there, and it fired right away. So
it it fired right away
in the quest here, like, because this is still relatively.
What do you
early.
mean?
No, I'm just saying, isn't the point of Chekhov's gun that it fires at some point during the storyline or the story of the play or plot that you're watching?
Well, later in this
you have
quest.
it backwards.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Okay.
I mean, it's like every element in a story must be necessary, and irrelevant things shouldn't be there. So if you feature a gun in a story, there must be a reason for it, such as it being fired sometime later in the plot.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this is the other point I wanted to make, though, Shane, was I felt like, and I don't know if I'm the only one, but with this reveal, this felt 7 years too late.
As in, this should have happened when signature heroes were on the menu?
It should have happened early on, because, okay, so here's my whole thing with the literary part of this quest, is that this automatically puts focus on the gender of the Raptor, right? Hey, 2016, you want to do a girl boss story? Cool. It would have fit. In 2023, who gives a shit? I don't care. Who really cares?
But the point,
apparently the internet.
But the point is that you can still do those storylines, and you can still do what they did here with the Raptor and tell that story. And that's the point about it being 2023, is that it shouldn't matter if they do this storyline. And that's why there was the huge kerfuffle on the internet. It's like, why do people care about this? If it's supposed to be 2023, we should be able to just have this and have it be the way it is in the game, and it should be accepted.
Right, but it was too late, because this isn't pertinent to, I mean, I
but
don't
they're
know.
not
Like I
trying
said,
to. And
Why
it
does
takes
it
away
have
from
to
the
be
Raptor.
pertinent to something?
right, and I want to.
I-
I'll come to you, Questcaping, in one moment. I just want to piggyback on something that Mod Jack said in the live stream this week. Is that this wasn't done for a diversity and inclusion pick during this quest, so we can throw that completely out the window when that comes directly from the lead game designer of RuneScape.
Yeah, well, the other thing though is even if you had made it a prince, I still wouldn't have liked it, right? Because I'm not. Why does the Raptor have to be Batman? That's my big
You
gripe
want the
here.
Raptor to maintain being that mysterious character.
You want the Raptor to be Zaltak, basically, the mystery character.
Well, but at least we interact with this, right? Like it's different than the Zaltak
Like,
in that regard.
sort of questing hero shows up, is
Yeah.
completely gone by the next day. Hey,
Yeah, and so for me, that was just an added thing that it just didn't matter, right? Like, I know there was a lot of talk about that earlier on, years and years ago. And I feel like if you do it then, you strike when the iron's hot, right?
But they
It's
weren't
because
doing
that
it
was
for that purpose, so I don't see why it needs to be tied to that at all.
because that's what the community was talking about when Raptor came out. It's like, oh, what is this? Now, I like the mystery part, but if you were going to explain it early on. Don't let it go 7 years down the road and then be like,
yeah,
oh, by
I
the
kind of
way.
get. I do kind of get both sides here, like, because it has been genuinely about over a decade since the signature heroes were introduced. Like, it was 2012
Yeah.
the Raptor got his
Yeah.
one quest he appeared in ever, and that was not about his identity at all. And like, we've just had years and years and years for the notion of the identity to just marinate and become a thing that would presumably never be solved. And like, well, here we are, and people are with fair reason, questioning why it's the way it is. But on the other hand, I don't know, it's for what it's worth, the gender thing is not intentionally the thing at play here. Like,
Yeah.
that is not at any point the key point they are getting at. That's essentially irrelevant. And like, I think I've seen in the Discord, Modjack suggesting that he thinks, he's pretty sure, but can't confirm, that the J-Mod who introduced the signature heroes back in the day, Mod John A, that he intended for the Raptor's big reveal to just be that the character is actually female under the armor all along, but that's actually really passé at this point. So what they're doing with that is actually making it a character reveal instead of just shock gender reveal.
Right.
Like, the fact that it is Ella Maria is the point.
And in some ways, it's more powerful that it's Ella Maria than just being a generic new female adventurer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because
And
you've got a combination of two characters who you would not expect to ever see combined, really.
Bingo. And I just want to touch on the graphical question, then we'll jump more down the Ella Maria bandwagon on this about where that goes. But there was clarification from both Mod Jack and Mod Stu about the graphical rework to the Raptor character, both in the live stream and Mod Stu's social post this week, in that the Raptor now uses the male skeleton, the player character skeleton, and part of the reason that he looks so weird is that Stu used an angry idle animation when building it, and this is going to be changed Monday to a more neutral animation, and they say it would have been better for everybody if the new model had come in before the quest launch, but for practical reasons it didn't work out in terms of the way they ordered the models at the start of the Fort 4 and 3 season. So
I'm not bad, I'm big bone.
It didn't really push me the wrong way, and in terms of the way the armor and the model fit on the Raptor, but maybe that's just other people being a little bit too concerned about that. I don't know. Does that bother any of you guys, the model change?
Not really. Like, I guess the Raptor does have a strong image. Like, this guy was the Twitch icon for a long, long time, like many years. Still is, maybe? I'm not sure. But yeah, like an image strongly related with RuneScape marketing, and I don't know, to have the graphical update just be considerably more slimmed down. I didn't have a problem with it. I just thought, graphical updates these days make sense, but other people sure are getting worked up, and I think it's just a bad combination of the reveal and that is sort of setting people really into overdrive.
I'm going to say it's the reveal that makes people focus on it more.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and one last thing about the reveal. Here's the other thing that really bothered me this week. I felt like there were legitimate reasons I had that I didn't really care for this quest or the reveal.
Yep.
And yet all of that air was taken out of the room because of the people that actually were mad for what I would say is probably misogynistic reasons. So you automatically got lumped into that group if
Not
you
in our
didn't like the
community.
quest. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Not in our community.
But
we got nuance
that was
here.
the thing. Right, but that was the whole impression I was feeling like this whole week, and I'm like, I'm not like them, but I don't like it either. You know, like
I feel that.
Welcome to
like, what's
being
going
outside
on?
the mainstream on the internet, Tanis.
Yeah, I guess, right? Like, there's a few things, you know. I also learned through this quest what PVMers feel like when we lock rewards.
We'll
behind
get to the
quests.
puzzle in a moment. We'll get to the puzzle in a bit on there.
There's a lot of growth this week.
Earth, you have anything else on the Raptors reveal?
I thought it was neat.
Yay!
Okay.
Good for you.
I thought it was really powerful when we look at everything.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I was into it.
Me too.
But I was never really into the Raptor in the first place.
Exactly.
So
And
Yeah, I mean, I had no emotional investment with the Raptor. If I did, I might not feel that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, they kind of like abandoned all of the signature
Preconceived-
heroes
yeah.
except for Ariane.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't they literally kill half of them?
Yeah.
I mean, we got Himbo Ranger alive.
God.
We got
Who is Himbo
Am
Ranger?
I wrong?
Ozan.
Okay.
Ozan.
Yeah.
He was like
still there.
He was like the one guy who'd survived. Like when the Menethos quests came out, he was the one signature hero who had survived a quest in so many years.
Yeah. And then that one of them was killed by Sliske and became a white,
a
right?
white. And now she's just still a white and just sort of vibing,
Yeah.
which is a bit weird.
Then one of them like turned evil, kind of, trying to bring balance to the Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to all the other ones?
Saroan came back. He kind of got one of his quests cancelled, but he came back.
Oh yeah, Grumpy.
We've got 7 dwarves names for them now.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And
That's all of them.
Yeah, I think.
Linza.
Linz is the white.
White.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it speaks to a greater
She's more
change.
like purple though, isn't she?
It speaks to a greater change in terms of how the storylines are carried forward, and I think we see that in the Raptor and Ella Maria. We're going to go there next, but before we do that, I want to thank our Patreon supporters for this week, in particular Alfie S, Amos Reed, Andrew C, Big Huge Rat, Chunk the Monk, Cycle RS, Drama Free, Duramax, Free Milk, Jacob G, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jeebus, Jesse W, Kesky, Ling01, Maniac RS, Mohan V, Nate the Great, Nick G, Pernasius, Renhawk, Ricky A, Rippeth, RS Nerdherd, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Seth W, Shirt Pants, Tabby, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Tom V, Ukulele Steve, and Zat. Big thank you to everybody there on that list, our Patreon supporters, for allowing us to do what we do here at RSBANDB Update. In addition to the experience tier folks that we mentioned earlier, everybody just is allowing us to press forward and do so many fun extracurricular things when it comes to monthly bits that we talk about. The meta monthly bit we did 2 months ago, the archaeology mini sites from this month, and a poll that's going to be going up right after we finish recording this episode. It should be up by airtime at patreon.com/RSBANDB. But if any of this sounds interesting to you, you can sign up at patreon.com/RSBANDB for as little as $1 a month. You'll get a special mention in our show notes, access to the entire catalog of monthly bits, the ability to vote on those monthly bit topics, and attend our roundtables, in addition to helping fund the cost for hosting and production of RSBANB Update. We also have our VIP tier for $3 a month, where you'll receive a special VIP rank on Discord, which includes chat channel access and a mention on the podcast at the start of the month, plus high-quality stereo versions of the show. And if you want to give the ultimate gift, for $5 a month, you'll receive a shout-out on the podcast each and every week and gain access to the outtakes we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And also, of course, again, a big, huge thank you to our experienced tier members. That tier had limited space. It's already sold out, so just keep an eye on that if anyone drops down or if anybody leaves. If that sounds interesting, those folks, of course, get the platinum shout-out, option to attend, recording of RSBANB Update, and a special Q&A with the hosts and producers of that episode, plus some mail-outs amongst other things. But all of this and more can be found at patreon.com/RSBANB. Big, huge thank you to all of our supporters. Thanks so much, everybody. All right, let's talk about Ella Maria, because I feel like the nuance of what was going on here was lost in, like you said, Tanis, the steam that the internet kicked up over this. And what was... let's go to everybody's first thoughts. What was everybody's first thoughts when we see that this is Ella Maria? Let's start with you, Earth.
Who the hell is this?
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
That was my first thought.
All right.
And then thankfully my character recognized her.
From Garden of Tranquility, amongst other things. Dimension of Disaster, so on and so forth. Questscaping?
Yeah, I did not recognize her, but when the dialogue option came up and it's like, oh, wow, right. It definitely felt weird right off the bat, but I was like, I can vibe with this. Yeah, we could probably go somewhere with this. I could see it having built up in Murder on the Border. We have been building to a point, and even if you look right back at Unwanted Guests, there was a lot of foreshadowing on the Raptor side as well of the sort of person this person is, like actual exploration of the identity.
And that's interesting when you put it that way, because we didn't really pull much out of Unwelcome Guests and Murder on the Border, but when you look at the focus, one focused on the Raptor, one focused on Ella Maria, and
now you pull the strands
bring it
together.
all together. Tanis, what did you think?
I thought that you got a hell of a lot of nerve asking me to move a statue halfway across this damn map, and you could push a boulder twice as far as me.
Oh my god. So this piece of shit just making you push statues, push boulders. What the hell?
But Tanis isn't...
Hey, she pushed the boulder this time too. Give her credit, even if it's in her dream.
Character development.
That's right.
We can do all sorts of things in our dreams.
Yeah.
But the thing that this highlights, and Tanis, you are right about feeling like that when you see Ella Maria, because if we go back in time to the Ella Maria character, in terms of going way, way, way back to Garden of Tranquility, she was the nosy one telling us what to do and being incredibly bossy to us. We look at the lore in Dimension of Disaster, and she is presented as somebody who married for power, and so on and so forth. Her character has been presented with something that probably has been said, and this was said on the live stream, isn't really acceptable in 2023. So there was a move, in effect, over the Ford 4 and 3 stories to redefine the character of Ella Maria, because Ella Maria is Queen of Misthalin for what is a larger Misthalin storyline encompassing multiple seasons, Fort 4 and 3 being one of them. And with that, in Dead and Buried, then we see this quest that builds the Raptor and Ella Maria up to be filled with what is effectively a unique character at this point that we're just learning more about. And, you can say that it might be hand-wavy or something to that effect, that they could have done this a different way. They could have, maybe chose a different set of characters or kept the Raptor mysterious. But I think for a storyline that focuses on Misthalin, we know a lot about King Rold, but when it comes to Ella Maria, she was always just in the background. And if there's going to be a larger Misthalin storyline, she's probably going to have an impact on that at some point in the future. And I don't think you could have done that with the old framing that was set up for Ella Maria.
It's better not to have her as a blot on the storyline.
Oh, maybe, but look at what Game of Thrones did with Cersei, right? Like, you can still be a bossy bitch and be cunning and cutthroat, and you know what I mean. So, this is one way to go, but I think there were others.
I think one of the points being made by like Monjack and stuff is that the Raptor, from the little characterization he displayed before this point, was also a bit like really sort of denigrating you every chance you got.
Yeah.
Everything you're proving yourself for, he's like, done that, fought bigger, try harder, not impressed.
That's true. I never made that connection. That's true.
And that's once again a parallel with Ella Maria.
Yeah.
In terms of how she was defined previously. So, and it also gives the opportunity to upgrade the characters of both the Raptor and Ella Maria to higher dimensions of, rather than just being, the cliche that was immediately put out. And that's why I find most of the arguing that was on the internet a little bit weird, because what people were arguing for was effectively to have a one-dimensional character. And Tanis, I don't put you into that category because I think that you can be mysterious but not be one-dimensional.
Yeah. No, and if you want that kind of like, I don't know, I think Cersei is a good example.
Never
right?
watched the show, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the audience will get it. You could, you could expand with her, in that regard. But all that aside, like, yeah, I just wanted the mystery to stay intact, right? Like, I just thought it was more powerful. I thought it made a more compelling person. But, this is why we can't have nice things.
What do you mean by that?
Like, there has to be some kind of, I don't know, I feel like everybody missed the mark with what they were arguing about what the true criticisms are.
Oh, well, it shows how silly it is to argue about those sorts of things.
Yeah,
I think the thing we really need to be focusing on is how my tax dollars are going to fund dragons. Because I can't tell you how many I've sold to the Raptor. Where are they, and what are they being used for? And why aren't we using them in this fight?
Secret Varrock dragon stash.
I think this is the real controversy here.
Yeah. So with that, are you guys ready to move on to the crypt then? Is there anything else on Raptor?
Dragons?
Exactly. Is there anything else on Raptor or Ella Maria? And I'm going to ask primarily.
I want to know where all the dragons are.
We're getting there.
Because I sold her a shit ton.
Okay. Tanis, anything before we move on?
Nope.
Questscaping?
We're good.
Okay. So we progress through this, and then we're actually able to get down and into the crypt after breaking out of the dream. And this is a wonderful new environment. I think this one was done by Mod Black Witch, and it just ticks all the boxes of RuneScape modern environments. I just have to say that. Just immersive, 100% fun to play, full screen on this. So very, very well done on that. My initial thing was to go try and chase down the yellow dots in the corners of the room, but then I was told that, well, you can't do that until you admire the paintings on the walls and the big centerpiece in the room. Then you can't start killing things. So you're in this big room. There's a big table in the center. You got to examine that. Then you examine the murals on either side of that, and then you're able to head into the corners and kill the fetid zombies. And each fetid zombie that you kill will drop one of the puzzle pieces for a gigantic sliding puzzle like the ones we have in Clue Scrolls. Who had a fun time with this?
Honestly, I don't use Outrun for sliders.
Same.
I was just able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to do it. It was interesting. I did like not having the solution that I could just hover over and I had to, actually figure it out. And I think they did a really good job by putting the borders around it, because in a 5x5 thing, that narrows the middle pieces down to just 3x3, right?
Yep.
So it wasn't like, then you just had to figure out the order of the 3 on each side, and then the corners are obvious. So,
I honestly liked having it 3D as well.
Yeah, that actually gave me the idea that wouldn't it be neat if they could do something like this for the Clue Scroll sliders?
Oh, man.
So, but I know there's one of us in here who didn't like the sliding puzzle.
Hated it. And I don't know how much was just a pure hatred of sliding puzzles, how much of it was accessibility related. But both things.
There was a lot of blue and green on the puzzle.
Yeah,
pieces.
It was very difficult, very, very difficult to see. And I know they had an accessibility mode, but I tend to think of that
there
as
was.
Yeah, but it was.
Yeah, you
it
can
was
talk to the Raptor.
Yeah, it was, but it was more of a cognitive, like, accessibility in that regard. I'm pretty sure that's why I put the borders on Earth. I think that.
So what did it do? Did you enable it? Because I didn't even do that.
Yeah, but it was collars and borders, so it highlighted those pieces.
Oh.
Which didn't really help me at all.
Right, because the way you typically solve these is you get the first 3 rows in place, then you got the bottom left 4 pieces, and then the bottom right 6 pieces. At least that's the way I do them, and have always done them for Clue Scrolls. So.
Yeah, and I just don't like doing these kinds of this kind of thing. It's not my thing, right? Like I don't like that. And because it was so difficult, that's where I got into the point where I'm saying, like, I'm only here to get a good story and a decent reward, and this is not worth it. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm frustrated. This sucks.
Well, they needed to bring in the Monkey Madness option, because remember, there was another puzzle box in Monkey Madness back in the day. You had to pay $50K, which was a lot back then to get that completed. They should have had to pay $500K and get this completed then.
There's actually a joke about that.
It said, give me $100 million. I'm like, here, take it. Here's $100 million, dude. Do it. But you couldn't. It was just a joke. I'm like, damn. Wish that wasn't a joke. I would have paid it at that point.
Pocket change these days.
I would have paid it. I'm telling you.
Well, there's your new gold sink.
Puzzles in Quest. Hey. Actually, no. I was going to say let people skip the entirety of Elemental Workshop 4 and 5 using that.
I can think of one person in the RSBANDB Discord who would be more than happy to pay money to skip quests.
Okay. So, overall, we move through this and we build out this sliding puzzle to form a piece of a map, and it shows that we are destined to go to an island in the Fremenic waters called Ungil, and we know that there's a big dragon on that island that has effectively destroyed it, and it's something that the Fremennik are actively terrified of, and that's why it doesn't appear on any of their other maps.
That
Old
did
time.
seem weird to me.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, I was expecting that we would
I
go
guess
there.
we don't have satellites, so
Right.
whatever. But surely someone has, accidentally.
Gone there.
Yeah.
Like,
He's a map maker.
I was thinking we would go there in this quest, but that's put on hold right now, and we'll get to what that means in just
Till
a
the
little
next
bit.
time.
Until next time, yeah, next season. Well, next season, but after
Next time on RuneScape 3.
bingo. After the puzzle is complete, you head back topside and say what you found, and you'll learn that there is now the process of a ship being chartered to the island, and that's where we leave off the quest.
Yeah, that really pissed me off.
Yeah, which just icing on a shit sandwich. From you're like, really, all this, everything I just went through. This is what I get. Fun.
And the thing is that we're not moving on to this with necromancy. This story's going to pick up after the necromancy season.
Ooh.
And that is, that's a RuneScape cliffhanger, because, maybe we could have got something a little bit more satisfying if we would have had an extra 5 minutes of exposition about what was going on, but we're not getting that until after the necromancy season. So that's where this quest leaves off.
But didn't
He's
we
saying,
learn? Didn't we learn about these kinds of cliffhangers though? These multi-freaking-year cliffhangers, they're not.
But there's a
fun.
plan to get this resolved, actually.
I'm sure there was a plan for Prifddinas too, but it took 10.
Yeah, the dev left.
So,
Yeah.
so
I will
let's hope
say,
the dev doesn't leave.
Marpo Sandra.
If you want to
do you
hear,
remember?
go ahead, Questscaping.
Do you remember the end of the Lord of Vampirium?
Mhm.
Where you, that is genuinely considered one of the greatest quests of all time, and that ends up on a really big, not so much cliffhanger as much as everything is changed. Where the hell do we go from here? But you mentioning extra 5 minutes of exposition, because it has.
It might not have been enough.
No, I think Lord of Vampirium really sort of gets what you need with a cliffhanger like this, which is just a moment for it all to settle, to just take it in, to just really take in the breadth of what we have going on here. If we had seen some tiny cutscene just
of the ship
showing
sailing
various
off and maybe
people in the
something
world,
happening there, hey?
Or a tiny glimpse of Zemmer Eagle on Ungale, like that one where you see the Dragonkin in While Gothic Sleeps.
Right.
Where you get hints of what's going on. A teaser instead of just the hard break.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have been better.
Yeah, and that I feel like that would have solved this. And we're going to talk more about where this goes with the Mod Jack live stream, because this left me feeling really uneasy after this quest, and I didn't start feeling better until I watched the Jack stream this week. What he effectively said was that regardless of this quest, it was a mistake to ask for a specific plot point to be delivered that wasn't critical to the storyline. It's not critical to the Fort storyline that Ella Maria be central to the quest. There has been a gradual decline in the need for quests to hit specific plot points and what they need to do coming out of the Sixth Age. So what that means is that the quests aren't as large and as encompassing as they were in the Sixth Age and Elder God Wars. With this going forward, Mod Jack says that as lead designer, he probably won't be dictating that quests hit specific plot points that need to be resolved, primarily unless they are critical, which means that updates just wouldn't make sense without them, rather than that this would be a cool plot point for the character. And that was his explanation on what happened here.
So help me here. The plot point that he specifically is asking, that he specifically asked for, was that Ella Maria be the Raptor?
Yes.
Okay.
And in hindsight, he feels that maybe he shouldn't have done that as lead designer.
Because it wasn't important.
Because it wasn't integral to the Fort storyline.
I think this sort of approach makes sense, because, like, asking for plot points to be resolved when they're not critical is how you get things like Grigorovich is actually a Chthonian demon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. Like, I think they set it up really well in the, like, Murder on the Border quest and, like, the whole thing. I think it was set up really well.
No, I'm with you, and I think it works for this storyline, and I think it really sounds like it's going to come into play. So
yeah, and
but what does
to an extent it is critical.
The only issue I have is doing a graphical update at the same time as this, because at the reveal, I literally said, "Who the hell is that?"
Yeah, and you know
out loud,
and that was mentioned in the live stream that it should have been done sooner.
Yeah, like I get the painting perfect. I think maybe if if it had been a little more than just a painting, like she came in and spoke for a minute or something.
She makes a reluctant appearance instead of the herald.
Or you have to go, or you're summoned to the castle to talk to them or something. So you don't have the weird, like, well, she's here, the Raptor, I can see them on my screen.
And
way over there.
And the thing I take away from this, it goes to, needing those extra 5 minutes to maybe explain what was going on after here in the after quest, is that if Ella Maria wasn't central to Dead and Buried and they didn't start doing that in Unwelcome Guests and Murder on the Border, heading in this direction, there's a chance that we could have actually got further through the story. And maybe that would have meant different things for necromancy. I don't know. And I want folks to remember back to both Unwelcome Guests and Murder on the Border. Reed, you weren't here for Murder on the Border, but my number one critique of Murder on the Border was that this thing is a fun little quest in terms of a murder mystery, but it doesn't advance our greater plot points. And
or did it?
Exactly.
But it. See, to me, I thought the 4 and 3, the story at its heart is we are a duke and we are protecting that northern border, right?
And
like,
who
what does that have to do?
Get the power from
the king, not the queen. Number one.
Okay.
There's a great little line in Unwelcome Guests where you joke to the Raptor, "Oh, does that mean you'll start calling me Your Grace now?" And the Raptor just refuses to reply.
But I feel like but isn't the story about Regal? Like it didn't need to be about Ella Maria.
No, that was where the lore people were going. That's where we were going. We thought it was going to be about Zamarigal.
Because it probably should have been. Even Mod Jack was just basically saying that. Because this is a plot point that you didn't need to hit. It doesn't push the story. Zamarigal would have pushed the story.
What story are you trying to tell?
We don't know.
I'm trying to tell about the invasion coming from the north.
I think it's kind of a story that has to involve Ella Maria because she is in such a prominent position in Mistalin.
And that's where I go sold on this, is that the focus is on Ella Maria, Queen of Mistalin, for the Mistalin storyline that has a number of seasons to it, 2 of which being Fort 4 and 3 and Necromancy. And that's where I was sold, that the execution of this felt initially questionable for me. It all came full circle, and I actually became happy with this in the entirety of the Fort 4 and 3 storyline. And that's where I'm at on this, and I feel like this is a good point to pivot into general ratings of the quest for folks who want to. Let's start with you, Questscaping.
I was saying beforehand that I would probably go for a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
I've been wavering on whether I'd round that up or down, like basically all week. I think I at first, like, on completion, seeing everyone rant about the Ella Maria twist, I was just thinking, wow, what the hell are you guys on about? But I have come to be a little more empathetic with the less ranty sides of that, let's say, with the less Reddit sides. And fortunately, it was one that went well for me. I don't know. I will probably just stay right in the middle with 3.5, and I can't, in good conscience, round that up or down right now.
All right. How about you, Earth?
4.95.
Wow!
All right. You want to expand on that?
It's the graphic thing that
Okay.
bothered me, and we had one too many sliding boulder puzzles. One
If you'd
too many.
slid that boulder one less time, that would have made up the extra
That would have been like
0.05.
no. That would have been like a 4.97.
Is this like the warp scale where you can't touch 5?
Will you turn into a salamander?
No.
Okay. Chadis?
Coming in, I would have not hesitated to give it a 1 out of 5, but I think we moved a little bit. You guys have moved me to 2. Because Ella Maria is more important than just a sassy chick that tells you the statue, which is kind of my opinion of her before.
Fair enough. And for me, in general, a quest to get a 4 out of 5, it needs to have no bugs in it. It needs to have a compelling storyline behind it. It needs to have good graphics, good visuals, and good immersion qualities around that. And this quest definitely did that in that regard. So we're automatically at a 4 for that. But I feel like with the added context of the fact that we're looking at this now from an entirety of a Misthalin storyline, with Fort 4 and 3 being one season, and the tie-ins in both Murder on the Border and Unwelcome Guests, I'm just going to go a little bit beyond Earth there and actually give this a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
We've got a wide spectrum here.
Me.
No, I mean, your points are legitimately valid, but I just want to give the quest what it's worth and round that up to a 5 out of 5.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that even though I have valid criticisms,
it should be a 5
I'm
star.
wrong, and
let's just ignore that, eh?
Let's just ignore my criticisms.
No, I'm saying they're valid, and they should be at least.
I see how it is.
I'm saying they're valid, and
I see how it is.
It's at least a 5 out of 5 with that factored in. So
at minimum a 5 out of 5. Could it be more?
No, sorry, I threw that extra word in there when I shouldn't have. So. And then, of course, the rewards. We know we have the quest points, treasure hunter keys, construction lamp for 8,000 XP, prismatic XP lamp for 3,000 XP and a skill above 30, and of course the ability to build all 3 tiers of the Fort 4 and 3's Rangers workroom. And that's quest complete. And being 100% honest, I think I'm glad we're able to make you feel a little bit better than where you are at, Tanis, on this. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. And maybe we'll get some angry comments that we're wrong and we should be with the rest of the internet on this for this quest.
Bring him on. Bring him on. Join us on Discord directly at me.
Earth will fight you personally behind the Wendy's.
I will. No, in front of the Wendy's, please.
We're doing this in full view of the world.
That's right.
In full view of the Frosties.
That's right.
Well, if anything, at least we gave a voice to people that didn't like it who aren't category 12.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about being able to, say you don't like something, but not necessarily go down the very stereotypical path that most of the RuneScape internets did this week. So,
yeah, because let's talk about these rewards. I'm a skiller.
Yeah.
And this was one of the reasons I'm like, oh yeah, this quest is good. It's got a good reward, right?
You don't like
I
the
mean,
Rangers workroom?
I might like the Rangers workroom if I was on a fletching grind, but really what it is doing is giving you extra resources, makes some things a little bit quicker, but there's nothing groundbreaking. Not for the amount of trouble I had to go through on this quest. Now, if one of you guys might be fine, because it doesn't sound like you had any trouble with it, so it's just a little extra thing. But I definitely felt how some on the PVM side probably feels when things get locked behind quests that they don't want to do, right? So this is worth it if you're in a fletching grind, but I mean honestly, you're just getting some extra arrows, which yes, that for a very short time this week you could do 25 mil an hour with dying arrows, and that was super short, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
that was
just
the comp requirement.
Yeah, it's just exactly, and so I gotta have a good reward too for that for that.
I feel
that
like
rating to be up there.
I feel like the space the reward sits in is hurt by the fletching skill.
There is only so much they can do with it, but see, to me, this just seems like a portable on steroids.
That's what
really
most
all
of the
it
things
is.
in the fort are, minus the Grove, primarily.
Well, no, there's a convenience, right? There's a convenience factor that this doesn't necessarily have. You got to bring all your stuff to this
Well,
place.
what the
whereas-
convenience is that you're actually able to make those dying arrows faster. That's the thing.
But it's just a little bit faster. Like if you look at the workshop, look at all the stuff in there. Like you can work your machines. You can, you've got this mining and smithing. Like
It's
you have
actually a lot
access to
faster. It's
everything.
1.2 seconds instead of 4.2 for a bunch of dying arrows.
Yeah. No, it's that's what I'm saying. It adds arrow. It gives you extra arrow essentially, right?
Which is good
Compared
for
to
the
what-
Iron Man. Still waiting to
Yeah.
hear if that scratches the itch there. But
Yeah, I mean, for someone that did not struggle with puzzles and everything, they're probably loving that. But for someone that spent an hour on that puzzle, you're going, this is it? Dang. And
well,
that's where
I honestly don't know how the Rangers workroom could have been made better. Do you have ideas on that now, or is that something we need to discuss later?
I think we probably would have to get into it later, but I think you're right on it's limited because it's a fletching
Yeah.
skill.
Because the way it
Yeah.
works effectively is that you use bolts until you get a Bow of the Last Guardian or Saren God bow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, and maybe they're there, and I just didn't see them. That could have happened, but something that would provide flax, so you could spin the bowstring, little spinning wheel in there. Just some things that like.
There is a spinning wheel.
Is there? Okay,
Yeah.
so I must have missed it, and that's easy for me to miss because I had a hell of a time
Yeah.
finding it early on. So, well, that's good then. I think you probably just hit the nail on the head, Shane. I think it is more limited, the skill that it is.
All right. Well, I'm content to move on then to Jack's live stream because, like I said, the idea of the Mistlin storyline and that continuing on plays a huge role in terms of the way they're going to be doing these quests going forward. And there's a good image at about the 14-minute mark in the live stream showing how this is going to be laid down. And he said he had to work very hard on this to not put any spoilers in because the 2024 season has a name and they didn't want to spoil that. So the way this goes, and this was really the aha moment for me, is that we have the Fort 4 and 3 season, and then we got the Necromancy season coming up starting in a couple of weeks. And then after that, we're going to have the 2024 season. And all of these things are then part of the Mistlin storyline, which is part of a bigger whole called the Age of Chaos, which they said is not like an official 5th age, 6th age kind of thing. It's just what they're calling it. And this is the topology, I guess, topology, taxonomy, choose a word, I don't know, one of those, of the way RuneScape storylines are going to go. And I feel like with this breakdown of how it is, everything became a whole lot more clear, and that the Fort 4 and 3 season and the Necromancy season and the one to come after that are all going to come together as part of this Mythsylin storyline. It's like how different aspects of the Dragonkin storyline and the Anachronia stuff all filtered in to Extinction at the end.
Yeah,
And I think that way of looking at it made me feel better.
It's almost as if you took expansion and broke it up into 4 months.
Except you put the content out over that period. Yeah, I know.
Raging fan base needs their updates.
Yeah. He said the storyline should have a concrete presented identity, and the season should then have their own identity as well, which we see now that this season did, and it was the character building between the Raptor and Ella Maria to give Ella Maria that different face as we head into the rest of the Mythsylin storyline after Necromancy. And he was very clear to say that neither Age nor Age Chaos are official terminology. It's just that Mod Stu needed something to put on the UI in terms of gathering the quest together for that. And he did have a quote here that raised our eyebrows. Mod Jack did. He said, "If we're getting distracted for 6 months, we're really not making progress on that storyline." And we, at the time, were thinking, okay, so we're just coming out of Fort 4 and 3, and we're shifting to Necromancy. Is that getting distracted for 6 months away from the Mythsylin storyline? But the way it looks in this chart here, it looks as though that Necromancy will be part, or at least have an influence, on the Mythsylin storyline. So that made me feel a bit better in that regard in terms of seeing how Necromancy fits all into that. But we see the 6 month comment more in line, I think, of, why can't we just do a couple of standalone quests in between, right?
It makes a little bit of sense though in this regard, because in the trailers that we've seen about Necromancy, they've made a point to say that the only way to take out a Necromancer is through the power of Necromancy.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to take exactly until we had the power of Necromancy, right?
Yeah.
So.
And then that's why Zemmereagle disappears, perhaps, in Dead and Buried. So I felt a little bit better about that in terms of where we go with the Mythsylin storyline. I'm going to move on into some of the other points from Jack's stream this week, specifically defining what storylines are. And this should help, too. Storylines are 18 to 36 months long. One coherent story with a beginning, middle, and end. Might have multiple acts. Comes to a reasonably satisfying conclusion. And an example of this is the Elder God Wars through Twilight of the Gods. Most narrative content during a storyline should support that storyline, and players deserve stories that go somewhere. So the idea behind that is that you really can't take a 6 month break to go and work on the gnomes, for example, with that.
Ooh.
But there's an opportunity for that in other areas. So continuing on with that, you then have seasons within those storylines that are 6 to 12 months long. These are coherent branding identities for RS. Includes things like content, promos, the battle pass system, so on and so forth. And ideally, this also includes a major update, which exemplifies the season. And here we are, Fort 4 and 3 season. So I feel like that once again explains where we are. And I feel like if we would have had this talk in February or March, we might have been having a different discussion about what those quests did and why the key was actually the content, the fort, the skilling hub at the fort, rather than talking about lore at the quest. So that's where I went with that. He also said that Jagex used to use the season and storyline and questline terms interchangeably, but storylines should be about 2 to 4 seasons long. Seasons have an aesthetic and marketing identity, and seasons also help players understand what's going on and don't affect content updates that much. Another thing again, Fort 4 and 3 season, built around Fort 4 and 3, content in there, not necessarily all related to the fort, but still, the focus was on the fort, and the storylines were a little bit running parallel to that like we had. Content post-Necromancy will piggyback off of Fort 4 and 3 and Necromancy, and the first major update after Necromancy ships will have modest Necromancy requirements and require the Dead and Buried quest, which is a pause in the Misthalin storyline. A pause in the Misthalin storyline after Necromancy comes out.
So, okay. So Dead and Buried is going to be a requirement for a Necromancy quest?
A post-Necromancy quest or piece of content. So that I don't think that means the quest that Necromancy will require Dead and Buried. I think it means something that comes out in September or October, for example, will require it. That's my take on that. Because we're getting all the quests with Necromancy's launch on August 7th. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. And this is my main own lingering concern, is that he said a pause in the Misthalin storyline, which is okay, I guess, with Necromancy. But my understanding of this is that we need what we learned in Necromancy going forward to carry on the Misthalin storyline. So from my own perspective, I think that's fine, because it's something that we're going to be using. It's like, I'd say, and this might be a bad example, going to pick up the needle in the Needle Skips, and then later having the needle play a central role in the Elder God Quest series, right?
Yeah, it's a pause, but it's a purposeful pause.
Exactly. And through him talking this out, this is what made me feel better about the entire thing. And then comes something about quest lines, and that people always mention, where's my gnome quest line? Where's my elf quest line? That sort of thing. I know. And he said that probably the closest thing to a quest line is a storyline. Right now it's Fort 4 and 3, but this can change if content makes it so that it doesn't fit. Necromancy is making it a little bit extra complicated with this. Then we get to requirements, which is a topic that us questers always talk about in terms of, is it time for a clean break, or is it time to have this huge tree of quest requirements for it? And
you definitely still have people around saying we should not reset requirements ever. Yeah. Everything should stack on top of everything else.
And there's time for that, and there's a time for not doing that. I don't think you want anything in Necromancy to have any previous requirements to it, because this is a huge opportunity to bring new players in, returning players and the like, and to get them into that content without any requirements.
I honestly think that, the quest we have just done had a really good approach to that, in sort of using content that hardcore questers will recognize, like Reldo, like the Dragonkin device, and sort of making nudges at the relevance there. I swear there was even a potion from Lunar Diplomacy, using that, but not requiring the knowledge, just making sure it's rewarded anyway if you've done it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of tying all these sorts of things together. And it goes to what he was talking about how you can do that without resetting all requirements to nothing. And those resets, he says, probably a good time scale to do that is about every 18 to 36 months. And the compromise then becomes, within a storyline, requirements are linear, but between storylines they can then reset. And over the course of a storyline, requirements will rise. And intuitions about what are suitable requirements don't keep pace for what is RuneScape. And this was a really interesting thing to hear, in that the devs are kind of worried about doing a quest that has 80+ requirements, but in reality, a lot of people don't realize that 80+ really isn't the climb that it was 10 years ago. How do we feel about that?
But see, I'm on the opposite side of this, because do we want, it's a 20-year-old game. If you have a new player, do you want to force them through all of this old ass content that is half broken, looks like crap, and isn't fun? Do you want to force people through that?
Like what kind of content in particular?
Quest. The
No,
old
no, no.
quests
It's
are not
no. They're not
good.
talking about quest requirements for this. They're talking about skill requirements.
Skill requirements.
Yes.
Okay. I
Because
thought.
everyone has level 80s these days.
Yeah.
Well,
They're not talking about making requirements from old quest, Tanis. The
Okay, yeah,
requirements
I
are
thought
going to
that's what
stick
we're
within the
talking about.
storyline. They're talking about the purely numerical requirements about is it a problem to ask for a level 85 skill requirement in a quest.
well, to me, it should only be there if it makes thematic sense, right? Like if I'm not smithing something, why would I need 80 smithing?
Yeah, and you know, I don't think they do that based on what we saw from Mod Stew's Game Jam stuff a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
So, I'd be interested to see what pushing the envelope on this looks like. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter what the requirements are on quests, because if they're low, people will still do the quests, and if they're high, most of the people who are going to be doing the quests at the middle and the end of a storyline could have jumped on at the start of that storyline and be leveled up to 80 right now. Like, imagine, like, what would let's put ourselves in this position. What would someone's levels be right now if they had joined in February and they played the game consistently? You know how far we got in Fresh Start. Now take that multiplier off.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Honestly, like 60s or 70s.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like.
So
And that's Ritual of the Majorat right there.
Yeah, so for a season that's a little bit longer than what we had right now, 80 plus would not be a tall ask.
Right now we're on 50s for the requirements of this specific storyline.
Yeah.
I feel like we should maybe ramp up to the 90s.
But to what end? What does that do?
More
Like,
powerful rewards.
But what?
Look at back in the day,
Well,
Prif
damn it.
required
Okay, never
75
mind.
and a bunch of
You win with
skills.
rewards. You knew how
Right?
to
And look
speak
what
to
Prif
me.
did
You
with
got
having
there.
the highest requirements at the time in Plague's End.
I feel like, though, recently we've had to give rewards that scale. Like, no matter what the skill requirements might be, they are still new quests that high-level players will do and expect some kind of reward out of. Like the Fletcher's Workshop thingamajig. It is useful to players of pretty much any fletching level, and you really do. It's like all these high-level quests doing all this new content and expecting something applicable for them. And like the fort kind of has to be a thing that ranges across all levels, even though the skill requirements haven't really matched that.
Yeah, I feel like the fort does pretty well at the mid to high level band. I'll say it doesn't do very well at the ultra high level band, but mid to high level is pretty good, especially for construction training. So
yeah, it's like you can access it with the lowest of the low skill requirements, and it just applies to all levels essentially.
yeah, but the interesting part about all this is that when it comes to looking at old content, the target audience, he said, for requirements are new players, lapsed players, and currently engaged players who are not caught up. And the people who make this podcast that are engaging with content on launch day are a very, very tiny portion of the pie. He said that a small portion of players engage with content on launch day or even launch month. So with that, it's fine to give additional rewards for additional requirements. So I feel like we're witnessing another change here in terms of the way quest requirements are handled in game, and you know it could at the end turn out to be for the better, I think. So
more of a reason, like have quests be something to strive for again. Hey,
yeah, that's how I'd put it.
I always felt like they were kind of haphazard.
Okay, just for the hell of it, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I want to talk about what he said about mega storylines, specifically the idea, could there be a big finale requiring multiple previous storylines like Well Gothic Sleeps and Ritual of Majrat? He said potentially yes, but it would be a single quest or a season and not a 2-year storyline. And I feel like this is such an important area to cater to, because us as questers, these are some of our favorite quests. And there needs to be a future where these kind of long, encompassing, epic level quests are still able to happen, like Extinction, like Well Gothic Sleeps, Ritual of Majrat, Plague's End, and so on and so forth. So it's good there's a category for this, but based on what we're seeing here, I feel like we're going to be seeing less of those as time goes on.
Yeah, there's not really as much room for the globe-trotting thing, the classic go all over the world to do everything quest. Because if we're focusing continent by continent, then that is inherently kind of restricted.
Yeah.
But if they're containing it to a season or storyline, like, to me, that's kind of like having your cake and eating it too, right? We get the best of both worlds. We're not waiting for 10 years to get through a story. Like, what is, at the end of the story could be a Gothic Sleeps at the end of that season, right? Instead of having to wait 4, 5, 10 years down the road because you're not going to keep people like that.
Yeah, and it's a question, it becomes a question of intensity and how many threads you want to pull in, which is something that we talked about that was going to be less and less over time, just to keep things more simple on that. But then comes the idea of mini storylines, and this is quite honestly where I think we'll get these one-off things, like the gnomes going forward. He said these would be single season, whole storylines. It could be a small story or a finale, and he specifically mentioned gnomes to us here in this One Earth. So I wanted to bring this to you, because I know this is something we've been talking about for so long, that there needs to be a time and place to bring these old storylines, or rather the old quest lines, to a close. So, he also said they could be breathers between large storylines, and they view Legacy of Zamorak that we had last year as a mini storyline, and we were right in that was so small, 60 requirements. So there we have it. Earth.
That makes a lot of sense in hindsight.
Yeah. Earth, where do you fall in on these mini storylines if they could provide an ending to the gnomes?
The gnomes. Are you saying that the gnomes only deserve a mini storyline, Shane?
Well, the thing that
they not deserve a full storyline, full-sized storyline.
Well, the thing we've been told before is that unless it was a specific storyline and season about the gnomes, we're unlikely to get a single gnome finale quest. So they would have to do this in one of these mini storylines, a palate cleanser, so to speak. And that's the unfortunate reality.
I think you're focusing too much on the height thing, Shane.
Cleanse your palate with
the
gnomes
height
today.
I mean, what about just
Shane? You said
time?
Mini storylines. Gnomes are short.
It could be anything. We could put the rest of Elemental Workshop in here.
Yeah, but you went for the gnomes. Why did you go for the gnomes when you're talking about mini storylines?
Because I'm pandering to you.
Oh, okay.
Because you like the gnomes.
I do.
And you're not short.
Thank you.
Anyways.
Don't really know how to respond to that.
But you see the point about how all these things are shaping up, and we can have a grab bag of potential things to do as palate cleansers.
Yeah, a season of the gnomes.
Yeah, and he said it could be...
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, a single season of a whole storyline. Or a finale.
That's right, for the gnomes.
Yeah, or Elemental Workshop, or anything else we'd like. And...
I kind of like that, like, brief return to the old way of doing things, just for the sake of wrapping some things up.
Yeah.
And maybe... I don't know if there's any other places that are banging this drum on here. I don't check in with the lore community that often. Is this something... I don't know if you keep your thumb on that, Questscaping. I don't know. Is that something that comes up regularly, the gnomes, and when can we do something on those?
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Okay.
Like, Arpazandra, people don't shut up.
All right. Okay, so this could be an avenue forward as a way of organizing around that. Good to know.
Yeah. There's a few that people want wrapping up, but gnomes are definitely up there.
Yeah. And I want to tie this all off here by talking about the purpose of quests going forward, because when we look at what Mod Jack had to say, and we look at what we saw in Dead and Buried, we are at an opportunity here to, in effect, I think, look at what the focus of quests are, and in particular how that played out in the Fort 4 and 3 season. Because you'll remember my main criticism was that didn't move the storyline along that far when both those previous quests, Murder on the Border and Unwelcome Guest, came out. But it's become clear, and this is something that Sirion pointed out, is that the core focus in this season was the content around the fort itself, Fort 4 and 3, and the skilling stations there. The quests aren't necessarily going to be huge centerpieces, and this is why the quests here feel smaller with the level of boldness and epicness that we saw in Elder God Wars and the Sixth Age. It paints the quests as something that are the glue rather than the objects, like questing around the skilling hub of Fort 4 and 3. And I see this as being backed up by Mod Jack's comments that quests since the Sixth Age have tried to hone in on plot points. And he admits still that this was difficult during the Elder God War, since it was a huge storyline with multiple plot points that needed to be resolved. I remember, I think one of the biggest ones that was unintended to be focused on was the voices in our heads during that storyline, that everybody thought it was Sliske and whatnot, but they had to explicitly say that it wasn't. And that's just an example. That's just an example of one of the many dangling threads that were there. And we go back to his last point on this, that regardless of this quest, he still feels, going forward, it's a mistake to ask for a specific plot point to be delivered that wasn't critical to the storyline. As in, Ella Maria wasn't central to this Fort storyline. And with that going forward, he won't be asking that story points get dictated unless they're needed to resolve the main storyline or critical to updates, and that they wouldn't make sense with that. And I think this paints an interesting picture of quests in that the centerpiece pieces of content, or the centerpiece can actually be the pieces of content and not actually the quest. And this goes back to a conversation that you and I, Questcaping, had a couple of weeks ago. You remember this conversation where I said that comparing this to Extinction, when it comes to people getting excited about quests, people don't really get excited about quests unless you're a lore person or a member of Clan Quest. And I think if they tie the quests in as being the glue to other pieces of content like the fort and necromancy, I think this is a way to bring quests to more people, which is something we should all be happy about. And if that's the way this is going, I'm 100% behind that strategy.
Because as much as I hate to admit it, it is a minority of people who play RuneScape for the quests. Like, there are a million more story-based games out there than this, but it just happens to be a point-and-click RPG MMO with some really good storyline attached. And some people appreciate that, some people don't. But if you get into that, if you're specifically guided into that via the content you're there for already, there's more chance of you actually being drawn in one way or another.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see this whenever they do a Jagex live stream about an upcoming piece of content. If it's something that's PVM related, Slayer related, the viewership numbers on that and the viewership numbers on the VOD afterwards are way higher compared to if it's a quest week. And with that, I think they need to be doing whatever they can to bring people to quests. And I think this new way of going about this in the Fort is a good thing. And of course, the community has ways of doing that too, friends chats and clans, amongst other things, like Clan Quest itself. I know we have recruited people into Clan Quest who weren't questers and start following along with the storyline. So once again, I'll say if you're a quester, or maybe if you're even not a quester, but you find what we're talking about here interesting on this episode, or what you played in Dead and Buried, guest in the Clan Quest clan chat. And if you like what you see and you want to be a part of that community, even if you're not 100% the biggest fan of quests, join Clan Quest if you like what we're talking about here this week. And I think that encapsulates one of the ways, in addition to how they're doing content, about how we can bring quests to more people. And I'll ask, I guess, Earth for opinions on this, since he is head of Guild Council in terms of Clan Quest.
Well, I think one of the top 3 things I've ever done in Clan Quest is I recruited someone during archaeology.
Oh my god, the name
is Quests Are Shit. That man now has a Master Quest cape and is he is working on doing that on an Iron Man now.
The ultimate conversion.
The ultimate conversion. And I did that on April Fool's Day, and everyone thought I was out of my damn mind. And look at him now.
Yeah, I remember that. And I just have to say,
he's really committed to the bit too. Like, he recognizes it, didn't change his name.
His examine texting game last time I saw him was something like, I have convinced the Quest clan I'm one of their own.
Really? I love that.
And his broadcast for getting Master Quest also made headlines on social media and whatnot too. So, but I am with this if it means bringing quests to more people, and that also fits within the mission of Clan Quest, I think. So we're very much aligned on this. So,
well, this is a good way of doing things. You're going to end up with a lot more cohesion, right? If you're not doing plot points just to do them, and you're only doing things that make sense, and you're doing it in a set amount of time, that brings a cohesion that's never been there before. When you're talking about making quests to glue, that makes sense, because the one thing that is different about questing than anything else in this game, it is one and done.
Yeah.
Right? You do it once, you never see it again. Why make that tentpole content when you do it one time, it's over, and you get 2 hours out of it?
Exactly. Like, and it's like what I say behind the scenes, is that if Jagex were making business decisions, they wouldn't make quests anymore. I hate to say it, but that's probably the way it is.
Well, no, and if you're doing it like this to kind of hold the content together, where the content is to showcase, but this is explaining and filling out around it, I think that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that, and that for people who might be worried, that doesn't mean to think that I don't think Jagex should make quests. Obviously, they should. We're having fun with this here. It just means that if we were looking at this, and if somebody said, okay, we got to, only do content that's going to make us money and make us more membership numbers, I think quests would be very low on that list. I might be wrong, but I think that's the way it is. That's all I mean by that. So,
got to figure out how to make this work as best as you can.
And I think you do that by wrapping it around a season as part of a storyline with a branding push behind it. Because somebody signs up in February for the Fort 4 and 3 season, takes part in double XP, they're hooked, do a few quests, that carries them through the summer, and then into Necromancy, and bam, you got someone who's a member for a year.
Oh.
And if that's the way they're going to do marketing, I think that's just how it's got to be in 2023. So, and with that, I think quests, I think we've kind of just proven that quests are an integral part of the RuneScape experience. Smile. On to patch notes we go. We're going to move through most of these relatively quickly. We got some fixes for the Woodcutter's Grove things, specifically the Woodcutter's Grove wood box functionality has seen the ability now to add wood spirits to them to improve inventory management. And I know when we were on this episode, I don't remember if it was you, Tanis, or Pernasius who was complaining about that, but here we are.
Yep, no, that was Pern.
And they needed that. They definitely did. That wood box is really punching above its weight now.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Reed, you're going to ask about the ore box at this point.
Yeah. So, how come the wood box, new kid on the scene, gets wood spirits, but I can't put all my stone spirits in a box?
That's a good question. And, now that the wood box can do it, maybe the ore box needs to be upgraded to hold geodes and stone spirits.
Oh, see, geodes, that'd be pretty good too.
Yeah. So
Look at you.
I know. I mean, if it's going to be consistent, let's keep it consistent across gathering skills.
Yeah.
Also, the My Fort Smells of Rich Mahogany achievement now requires maple planks to better fit with other medium-level area achievement requirements. And with this, the achievement has now been renamed to My Fort Smells of Syrup.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could say maple syrup is a thing. I'm not a purveyor of maple syrup. That's more of a thing that comes out of Eastern Canada. But, I mean, hey,
God, you were such a race traitor to Canada.
Not anymore.
maybe the Woodcutters Grove just needs a little Canadian flag strewn up there with all the maple trees and whatnot at this point. That might be
We'll
fun.
burn your capital again.
Oh, boy. No, that was the other way around. We burned the White House in 1812.
We burned y'all's too?
Okay. Anyways, sorry, folks. History aside, the Quest Cape, and I've got a little.
Ever heard of York, Shane?
Yes, of course. That became Toronto.
No, known as Toronto.
Yeah, yeah.
We burned that shit, buddy.
That was the capital. That was the capital of Upper Canada.
Which is somehow below Lower Canada.
Well, the reason for that,
which is also I know it's stupid rivers.
Yeah, it's based on the St. Lawrence River, up the St. Lawrence, down the St. Lawrence, that sort of thing.
Up yours.
Okay. The Quest Cape, and I've got a little list of mini quest achievements now list their requirements in release order rather than alphabetical order. All right. And then with the launch of the fletching workshop at Ford 4 and 3, fletching has received a number of fixes this week, including fletching buffs for saving resources and auto-stringing unstrung bows now have an additive percentage chance when multiple buffs with the same effect are active, instead of rolling on each buff separately and choosing the first one to proc, i.e. Crystal Knife versus Borgali Incense. This more accurately represents the desired outcome of stacking random chance buffs and provides an increased probability for the effect to proc. And this is how it should be with all buffing things in RS, I say. So hopefully there will be a pass for things that aren't like this to bring them in line. Now here's a fun one. Additional XP is now awarded when the Fletching Cape inspires you to craft extra ranged ammunition and headless arrows. The chat message now points out that an extra bundle has been made instead of double, allowing for other buffs that provide additional bundles to proc at the same time. So you could get a doubling with your Fletching Cape. And I think this just adds more utility to the Fletching Cape, if I'm being honest, and that's good. Puts it in the same realm as things like fishing, I see. So
Yeah.
The portable Fletcher no longer provides a chance to string 2 crossbows at once, and the portable Fletcher now allows a chance to save resources when making unstrung crossbows, as well as producing 2 at once. If both effects proc, saving resources will only apply to one of the fletched bows. Also, there's better continuity against fletching skilling pet rolls. It turns out that you had a higher chance to get the fletching pet if you were fletching Elder God arrows, in that boosts applied directly to an XP gain should not provide an additional chance, but Elder God arrows were the only instance where the skilling pet roll was calculated using buffed XP. This has been amended to remain constant with other fletched items. However, additional XP and skilling pet chance is now provided if the extra ammo buff procs. So there's that. And it's just, I guess, smoothing out all the little weird features at the end of the day. And then we come to the headless chicken. The player-owned farm hen perk headless chicken would consume 1.5 times feathers instead of 0.5 times when fletching headless arrows and darts. Thank you. That's patch notes for the week.
Oops.
Yeah. So you would use more feathers rather than use less.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how long that's been a thing.
It must probably been a while, because I forgot the farm could even do stuff.
Yeah. It's really powerful. You should look into that. Anyways, folks, that's it for the patch notes this week. We also got the updated soul die, and I have to say, looks really good. I'm going to include some screenshots in the show notes at update.show, but Jagex has their own version of popular armors, weapons in the news post in GIF format, but I managed to snag a couple shots of this in the wild, and as somebody who loves green things in RuneScape, this is actually probably one of the first dyes that I myself would consider using. That fractured staff looks nice, the scythe looks nice, the armors look very good as well. So I'm a fan of the way this soul die landed. How do you feel, Tanis, since I know you looked at them previously compared to where we were at?
Still can't tell.
Oh, right. It's a green issue.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Can I interest you, Questscaping Earth, in any green weapons or armors here?
I have no investment here.
Okay.
I do not care.
All right, fair enough. Well, folks, that pretty much brings us to the end of the core RuneScape content this week. We're going to move on now to our achievements of the week, aside from that wonderful soul die, how it looks now. Questscaping, you want to start us off with our achievables?
Alrighty. So on July the 18th, we had Terry Dax with 120 archaeology. On July the 17th, there was XOX Scotty XOX with 120 mining. And on July 16th, 2023, some guy called Lord Earth got 99 divination.
Right on.
Nyard got 99 prayer on July 15th. Simbakuro, 99 archaeology on the 15th. Borizi, 99 archaeology on the 14th, and Legion 1943 on the 14th. Or 120 smithing on the 14th, excuse me.
Nicely done.
And then continuing on the 14th, this slacking procrastinator, looks like you're named Lord Earth, got another 99 construction hunter. He's on the way. We have Barazi, 99 prayer on the 13th.
Good job. And then wrapping it all up on the 13th, we have Noonie01 with 200 million mining XP, Terry Dax with 99 mining, and Tiztalk Rex with 120 prayer, also on the 13th. Well done, everyone.
Nice job.
Yay!
All right, pick of the week time. What do we got here? Questscaping?
All right, so I'm here to recommend something called Good Omens, which was originally a book, then adapted into a series, currently on Amazon Prime. It got its first season, I think, oh goodness, that must have been back in 2019 by now. While back, an adaptation of the book, which I think came out in the 80s or 90s, which is by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett before either of them were famous. And just a complete coincidence that these two authors who happened to collaborate both went on to wildly successful fantasy careers of their own. And it's just this brilliant, sparkling little book of fantasy comedy, just like heaven and hell on this angel and demon decide to look over the earth and finding they actually quite like it, and oh dear, the Antichrist has come along and Armageddon is kind of happening, and they realize they might not want that to happen. So it's this madcap misadventure of trying to prevent the apocalypse. And there was a season of Good Omens on Amazon Prime that did very well, and now it's a slight confusion on how they're now doing a series 2, because Terry Pratchett, famous for Discworld, dearly beloved and sadly deceased as a few years ago. He naturally can't provide any input on season 2 anymore, but apparently there are notes they're working on. They've recruited a very good comedy writer to help fill in the gaps, and they're continuing the story where it left off, and hopefully to very good things. And that is July 24th, that new season is coming out.
Okay, so I assume you'll be lining up to watch that when that drops on Prime then.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And it's worth also noting here, just scrolling through the casting credits, that Benedict Cumberbatch is playing Satan in this.
Yes, that's coming up in the new season. That's going to be a fun one. But yes, all the British actors you might know, like the demon is played by David Tennant. We've got Michael Sheen as the angel, and they have quite an amazing repartee. It's great fun.
All right, sounds good. Amazon Prime, and it says BBC Two in the UK, but I'd assume Amazon Prime is probably the best place to go for this, right?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. What have we been up to on RS? Let's start with you, Tannis. It seems like you might have had an interesting week with all your puzzle boxing and whatnot.
Yeah, and as soon as I could, I stopped and went back to necromancy prepping. Got some more bones, did some more wyverns, more frost dragons, just to top off my supplies. And in between, still cutting elders, because that's, a nice mobile friendly AFK.
How are they doing for money?
I don't know. I have been I just turn mine into planks and drains.
Okay, fair enough. Plank maker and whatnot.
Yeah, and Shane's been telling me, because I have about 4K of the elder frames. Shane's been telling me doesn't think that's going to go very far, and I'm tending to agree with him. So I might actually
just sell them for money.
Well, I was thinking of saving them. I could do that, or I could save them for the next double XP and try to get a good, a real good stack.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
We could get close to maybe 2 mil an hour on double XP.
Yeah. Well, it would be because it's just a hair over a mil without any buffs. So in theory, you could actually push 3 if you had bonus XP.
Well, I could get close, but I'm not going to be doing optimal build.
Right, fair, right. Good point. You're going to be sticking to the perfect build.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on that, then I think it was around 800k. So you'd be coming in around 2.2, 2.4 an hour with bonus XP and double XP on that then.
Yep.
Which still isn't too bad. AFK.
No, I mean, well, yeah, and to get that before, you would have had to give yourself arthritis and carpal tunnel, right? Yeah. So I mean, I'm cool with that. And so now for double XP, I still have 2 combat to get to 120. So I might just work with those, while I'm getting my bonus.
Yeah, get it right in line for necromancy, hey? So all combat's done.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. How about you, questcaping?
I've been catching up on my quest and catching up on my fort, honestly. It's pretty cool content.
Yeah, you're enjoying it?
Yes. A lot of chopping, though. A lot of chopping.
Yeah, you got to... Yeah, it is a lot when you do it that way, and especially if you want to go for an incando hatchet and whatnot. So I hear that, but glad you're enjoying it.
Hey.
And then, of course, we go to Earth. I'm not going to steal your thunder. You go right ahead and tell the listeners what you've been doing.
I have finally decided to make the push to max before necromancy, and I am. Well, how much XP away was I, Shane?
You said 30k?
No, you said 1,000 and 19 something.
Yes, something like that. And I am logged out at the Earth altar. And then once a key group of people's time lines up, It's happening.
Is this
I
like
will
the
be
Book of
getting
Secrets thing
99.
where we all gather in a place and something special happens?
What?
Like the Book of Secrets kind of thing where everybody stands in a certain quadrant and does something when the other person,
Book of
you,
Secrets?
does something and a big thing happens?
Jesse, what the are you talking about?
Never mind. Continue on.
Book of Secrets?
Yeah. I feel like this is something from...
Are you talking about National Treasure?
Yeah, that might be it.
Oh my god, Shane.
I'm glad you speak Shane, because I did not know what that meant.
He's
Good
got lots of
lord.
practice.
I wasn't sure. I was like,
I've never really questioned it before, but then I just actually looked up Book of Secrets, and this man is talking about National Treasure. Book of Secrets.
Wow.
The sequel. Leave this in. So rune crafting will be my final 99. Until necromancy, of course. Because I will be getting it at the Earth Altar. And
It's very fitting.
yeah, I can't. I mean, I didn't even plan it. I knew rune crafting needed to be the last because I didn't want like fletching to be my last one or something, right? Wanted it to be a good one that was last, and then I realized I should do it at the Earth Altar. I had that
You didn't even
realization like
plan it.
a week ago.
Earth.
Yeah, I didn't even plan it.
What? Why are you chuckling, Tannis?
Planet.
Oh.
Dumbass.
Well, pre-congrats on the 99 rune crafting and Max. That'll be in next week's achievement spread. Actually, no, it won't be in next week's achievement spread, I don't think, because we got a special episode on next week. More on that in a moment.
Wow.
But good job with that. As for me this week, I'm still progressing along, and I'm happy to report that I now have 120 fire making banked for double XP.
nice.
Nerd.
And outside of that, been working on unlocking the Wisdom of Anima perks because I do want to get comp back before Necromancy, and it's turning out that I'm going to need to be making about 7,500 of each of the Dine Arrows. So I was fortunate in that I had the uncharged Dine Arrows in my bank beforehand that I'm going to be able to get that done without doing the most laborious part of the job. I just needed the Anima, and that was a bit of the delay because of the 5k buy limit on that. But other than that, we're good. It's good to be tapping back into fletching for a little bit. So, but as I mentioned, we do have a special show coming up next week. Mod Doom, RuneScape community manager, will be joining us for another installment of Behind the Crown. We'll be talking about what brought him to Jagex, learning a bit about how he plays RuneScape, and talking about why trust and building bridges is so important when it comes to community management. So Tannis and I had that discussion. Look for that appearing next week on the RSBANDB update feed. But with that pretty much wraps this episode of Update. If you want the podcast delivered automatically to you, the best way to do that is to subscribe. We're on all the podcast listeners out there. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google, Pocket Cast, Spotify, and more. Just visit update.show/subscribe. And we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANB. That's where we post the video versions of the shows and the nibbles each and every week. And as with all the other podcast listeners, you want it delivered automatically, the best way to do that is to subscribe. But once again, thank you for joining us, Questcaping for Quest Week. Always fun.
Thank you very much.
And also Earth for returning to the podcast as he's just so close and getting closer and closer to Max. Thank you.
Woo.
And Tannis and I will be back next week with Mod Doom. So until then, see you then, and take care, everyone.
See ya.
Sweet.
Goodbye.